Come hell or high water, the San Francisco 49ers are putting a lot on the shoulders of one Brock Purdy, even if he does get a new contract. I'll explain on today's Gold Diggers podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Gold Diggers podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. She's Michelle Majuk. It is Friday. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I got my mimosa. I am ready to roast you, and it's going to be a fun episode.
All right, we are going to talk about all the pressure the 49ers are putting on Brock Purdy's shoulders, even if he gets a new deal in 1 second. But we do this on Friday. We call it Roast and Toast. We're going to read your review. We're so grateful for all your reviews. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Apple Pods and Spotify and everywhere. We'll read a review. Michelle will toast you, and she will roast me, and we'll do a couple more at the end of the show. This one comes from Niner Fan in Huntington Beach, 5 stars, the best 49ers content creators. Rob and his crew are amazing. Daily programming plus a wonderful little short in the morning to ensure the listeners are up to date. Enjoy the different perspectives of each co-host, but love Mimosa Michelle as she and Rob have won me some money with their best bets during the season. Cheers.
Cheers. Stats. ESPN hired you to be on radio only instead of TV because you look like a teenage boy who just hit a growth spurt.
Oh my goodness.
Cheers.
Savage. Damn, I'm liking this segment less and less. Also facts. Anyway, thank you for that. Like I said, we'll do the reviews at the end of the show. But I was thinking about the situation with Brock Purdy. And this is all, because of the whole contract situation and also because of the signing of Mac Jones. And I was just thinking like, damn, if I am Brock Purdy, if I don't get a contract, of course there's pressure, right? Because you're playing for a deal worth over $100 million, and that would mess anybody up. Even if there is a contract, however, Michelle, there's still pressure on him because of the exodus of talent from this roster. I've seen a lot of people say, hey, if your coach is the guy and your quarterback is the guy, you shouldn't need to have the Avengers around you. You should still be able to pick up the slack. And maybe that's true, but that still is a lot of pressure on Brock Purdy's shoulders.
It doesn't mean you don't need anybody either, right? It doesn't mean that you can have a bad defense. It doesn't think about Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. They've been working with pretty good defenses as of late. And they still maybe their actual weapons are not top notch, but they have good teams around them. Like Josh Allen has a great offensive line. Mahomes did for a bit, and last year it kind of came back. But he's always had, a good line around him typically, and then a really good defense the last couple of years. You still need help. You can't just ask him to do everything, especially because he's not at that level of those elites. We already know that. And I know he's being asked to be paid, but that's just what happens when you are due for a contract as a quarterback. But I mean, he's going to have so much on his shoulders this year. It's not going to be good, I don't think.
Keeping the Faith says, going off your title, they should be putting a lot on Brock Purdy. He's going to be paid like an elite quarterback, so he has to perform like one. JCG 1987 YouTube channel member. Shout out to all our YouTube channel members out there. Thank you. JCG says, I would say most of the exodus is defensive. He should be fine with Kittle, CMC, Pearsall, BA, and JJ. I just want to know, Michelle, has Brock reached the minimum amount of teammates required where you could give him credit, or does he still have too many where he's got too much talent around him? When is the threshold there?
Yeah, no matter what, even though CMC is going to be 29, pushing 30 here soon. Pearsall had a good game or two as a rookie. Brandon Ayuk is coming off a devastating injury, and apparently we're we're acting like Juwan Jennings is some amazing weapon here. He's still going to not get the credit because Kyle Shanahan. I will say, the defensive exodus is a big deal because that means if the defense is super bad, that they're allowing points, that's going to put so much pressure on the offense to score every drive. And when you feel pressure that way, you make more mistakes. You're pushing it more, right? You're not playing it safer when you should be. Well, you can't even really play it safer because you have to score because your defense is so bad. That does put a lot of pressure on a quarterback. I get they haven't lost too much on the offensive side, but it does matter that they're losing on the defense.
And I do think that he felt that a little bit last season. He talked about trying to play too perfect at times, right? And how that got in his head. Fishy says a depleted defense will put more stress on the offense to produce. I totally agree with that. And right now, their defense looks potentially like it could be even worse considering the talent that they've lost. I know everyone, says they're going to kill it in the draft and they can replenish in the draft. Maybe. We don't know. Even if they try, if the guys they pick stink, this defense is going to be horrible. It's going to be way worse than last year. So I completely understand why Brock Purdy would be sitting there going, oh my God, there's a lot on my shoulders.
I will say, at least Robert Saleh, we probably don't have to worry about finding a new defensive coordinator next year, because in the world is he going to have a top 5 defense with the amount of missing pieces they have at this moment? They're going to have such an elite draft class, pretty much all on the defense, to give them viable even starters, because right now so many guys on this depth chart are in line to be a starter that would not be starting for 95% of the other teams in this.
That's never a really good sign. Like, that is not a position you ever want to see your team in. I saw this tweet from Doug Clawson, who a lot of 49ers content creators are just copying and pasting and then giving him the old hat tip, which that annoys the hell out of me. Like, there's a retweet button for a reason. Please just do that. But anyway, the tweet is this. Other teams have spent $321 million on 49ers free agents this offseason. The most money spent on a team's departing free agents in NFL history. And the Niners, meanwhile, have only spent $37 million on free agents, making it the largest free agent spending deficit in NFL history by over $80 million. That is just a crystallization of the picture that we have seen and the massive, massive change that this roster is going through.
And it's not even so much that we should be upset about the guys that they're losing, right? Like, we've talked about this. We didn't want to overpay for a lot of these guys. Like, the amount of money that Aaron Banks got, ridiculous. Like, you don't want him. It was okay to lose Hufanga, I think, instead of paying him. Javon Hargrave had to go, right? He was being well overpaid. I'm also like, Leonard Floyd got the sack numbers at the end, but that's all he can really do, right? He's limited. He's just a pass rush guy. Their run defense really struggled, and he was part of that. Charvarius Ward, it would have been great to keep, but we understand personal reasons why he couldn't re-sign there, right? The only big loss on defense where we really felt like they could have easily done it if they weren't being super, super cheap was Dre Greenlaw. I think that's the really eye-opening loss there to really show how cheap they're being. The issue, though, is just they're not adding anyone at all. Like, the second part of that tweet is the issue, not the first part.
Yes, exactly. It's not. I think we all generally kind of agree on them letting those people go. It's the second part of the additions that drive you crazy. Although I have to say, Michelle, like, what is this? Dre Greenlaw in a Broncos jersey? Oh, I can't. No, it just looks so wrong. If you're watching on the stream, you could see it. Talanoa Hufanga is there signing the contract. It looks bad. The Niners put out the Dre Greenlaw thank you video yesterday on Twitter. Oh man, somebody started cutting onions when I started watching that thing because it hit hard.
That contract is going to annoy me forever. 3 years, $35 million. Like, that's a very, very doable contract. That is so doable, especially when it's such a big need for them too. It's not like they had an excess of linebackers and you're like, you know what, you are good, but we're able to move forward because we need to spend elsewhere. You need to spend at linebacker. Right now they need to find a linebacker, and you're able to get a really good one for 3 years, $35 million. And you're like, nah, we're just going to let him walk.
They must have real concerns about that Achilles and about him.
But is that it? Or are they just being that cheap? Because if it was just concerns about the Achilles, they would be trying to add another linebacker in free agency, right? They'd be paying for some other guys to come in if it was just the injury they're worried about. But they're not adding anybody. They're not paying anybody. So I don't think it has to do with the injury. I think it just has to do with them being incredibly cheap at the moment.
And let's be clear, if you do have the head coach that you think you have and the quarterback that you would think that they think they have, given the contract they're set to give him. Yeah, that is part of this too, is to whom much is given, much is expected, right? You are putting a lot on the shoulders of your quarterback, but that is the position in today's NFL that has to carry a lot because of how much money they make.
That's so silly. It's just so silly. So Joe Burrow, the Bengals shouldn't sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They just shouldn't, because they're paying Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow's great. Don't sign him. No,
they should.
No, because they have a good quarterback. They don't need They don't need weapons. That's just so silly. The Eagles shouldn't have paid AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. They shouldn't have, because they paid Jalen Hurts. Like, that's just so stupid to say. It's just, I'm not saying you're saying it, but to have that thought process that just because you have a good quarterback and you're paying him, and just because you have a good head coach, you shouldn't pay good players to be on your team. Like, you can only be so good without playmakers, without good players on both sides of the ball.
You should let your roster sort of dictate where you pay. For example, like, you shouldn't overpay to keep a replaceable offensive player, but if you have a really good a bunch of good defensive players, like, that's where you can invest your money. And sometimes cuts do have to be made when your quarterback is making a big money deal. Not that the 49ers are in that spot right now, or particularly this offseason.
They're not even close to that situation
No.
right now. That's why I don't understand why this is the offseason that they're being so cheap. This is the offseason they could have actually loaded up while still paying Brock. Like, this is the time they could have went all in, and instead they're doing the exact opposite, going to tear it down while also going to have to start paying Brock Purdy a lot of money. Like, this is not the time to tear it down.
Speaker, YouTube channel member for 14 months. Thank you so much, Speaker, for all that support. I appreciate it. Says, I'm worried about Parag. You can't moneyball the quarterback. Well, they do have Mac Jones. And the unforgettable perspective says you're going to have to replace that sticker behind you, Michelle, because you got the Brock Purdy fat head. You might have to go with a Mac Jones fat head. And I have to say, let's give credit where credit is due, because Michelle and I do a Bleacher Report show every Monday and every Wednesday. And last week, we did a free agent wish list of who you want the 49ers to bring in. And I'm just going to play the video of Michelle from last week. I had said, I was joking and said I want the Niners to bring back Trey Lance. This was Michelle's response.
Jones, same draft class, and who they're going to bring in for the backup is Mac Jones, same draft class, and who they actually wanted to take, but they're too scared because of fan base, hysteria with Trey Lance, with taking Mac Jones over Trey Lance or Justin Fields. But Kyle Shanahan is going to get the guy he actually wanted in Mac Jones to be the backup for Brock Purdy.
Nailed it, Michelle. You nailed it.
I don't want you playing clips from that episode, please. I don't normally go to happy hour before we do those shows, but I happened to be celebrating that night, and I went to happy hour and had too many mimosas before we recorded that. And woo, that's embarrassing.
Is that why you said this when talking about the Niners potentially bringing in DJ Reed and pairing him with the other cornerbacks on the roster?
It'd be a really nice threesome type, a quarterback threesome there.
I love these streams with you. We're here every Monday and Wednesday. Bleacher Report app. You never know what's gonna come out of Michelle's mouth. We've gotten one of those lines from you like every time we've done a Bleacher Report show. So don't even say it was blame anything else, Michelle.
Man, I'm realizing how bad I am at podcasting when you're showing that. Don't do that anymore.
That's not true. But it does give me the opportunity when we're talking about Brock Purdy and how much they're putting on his shoulders to play one of my all-time favorite movie drops of all time. And Michelle, if you don't know this movie, we're going to have problems. Okay, so I'm going to play.
I probably don't know it.
If you don't know this, then you have to watch it before next week. But this, when we're talking about things on people's shoulders, I think of this.
I swear to God, I do not need this right now, okay? I got a judge that's just aching to throw me in jail. An idiot who wants to fight me for $200. Slaughtered pigs. Giant loud whistles. I ain't slept in 5 days. I got no money, a dress code problem, and a little murder case, which in the balance holds the lives of 2 innocent kids. Not to mention your biological clock, my career, your life, our marriage. And let me see, what else could we pile on? Is there any more shit we could pile on to the top of the outcome of this case? Is it possible?
Name that movie.
Well, now I know it's My Cousin Vinny because everyone put it in there, but I would have never gotten that in a gazillion years.
What? Oh my God.
I only know because the comments. I've never seen the movie, and you could have given me maybe 500 guesses, and I wouldn't have gotten to My Cousin Vinny. I would have never thought of that movie. I've heard of it, but
you watching it. That is your homework assignment. You have to
it
watch.
doesn't sound like, just from that clip alone, it doesn't sound like a character I would like, and it doesn't sound like a movie I would be into.
It is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's one of the movies where if you were like flipping through the channels back in the day and you saw it was on, you watch it, you stop and you watch it no matter where it was in the
So
program.
funny. I just did that with Coyote Ugly a couple nights ago. You can't skip that movie.
Speaker says, boot Michelle from the channel. As Oscar Alfaro, YouTube channel member, points out, Marissa Tomei, at her best, I believe she won the Oscar for that performance in the movie. You have to watch it, Michelle. I cackle when I watch that movie. There are so many good parts. Please, please, please.
Maybe I'll watch it for you. I'll let you know.
Maybe you're watching it. Come
Okay,
on.
all right. I don't usually watch movies, but I'll try. I'll try.
Yes. Well, gee, I'll make a huge sacrifice. Take 2 hours out of your day. I know you got to fit it in between frisbee golf and foot soccer or whatever the hell you're doing on the weekends. All right. Speaking about the offense, the other thing I wanted to talk about, because there was an article from, not Eric, was it Eric Branch or Cam Inman? Somebody, and it was like projected 49ers starters for this season. So I was like, all right, let me write it down. Okay, Trent Williams, Ben Barch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colton McKivitz. All right, Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, at least to start the year. You throw in Demarcus Robinson, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, and I got to the other running back spot, and I was like, all right, Juice is gone. And then I started thinking, like, what can they do now that Juice is there? What are they going to do? Are they just going to run 2 tight ends, 1 running back, and just like eliminate the fullback from their playbook? It's certainly possible. Other people that run the Kyle Shanahan system have done that. Are they going to try to replace Kyle Juszczyk with Luke Harrell, the tight end that they just signed? You could do that. But then I started thinking, like, what about some of the more creative stuff that they could do, Michelle? And the 2 options I came up with are, 1, use George Kittle as the H-back more and have him play a lot more in the backfield, which I thought could be really interesting. You know he can block, so it's not like you're, at a disadvantage there. I thought that could be good. Or put Garendo on the field with Christian McCaffrey. Garendo is a great receiving option. So if you wanted to run that play where Juice goes deep or whatever, you certainly could do that. He's way faster than Kyle Juszczyk. He's a legitimate receiving threat, so you could motion him in the slot, and that could mess with defenses. I thought those were the 2 options that maybe Kyle could use, which, in my opinion, would be very fun to see.
There is a lot of options. I don't love your idea of changing George Kittle's role too much, right? He already doesn't get enough opportunities for targets. Like, why do we don't want Kyle Shanahan to get that in his head, right? Ooh, let's use him in the backfield more. Especially how much he already is using him to block. We want him out there. He's going to have to be the top target this year, right? I think he should be the focal point of this passing game offense. So I do think they can get very creative in the backfield, and I love that. Although I'm sure it's just going to be a lot of Christian McCaffrey just playing the normal running back role, because at the same time, being too gadgety in the backfield, when does that really work out all too well? So I'm okay if they just want to say, go with Christian McCaffrey. They can find another fullback if they want to use a fullback. Like, that's not a hard thing to do. They don't have to, struggle too hard to find someone. And then just utilize George Kittle like the Chiefs utilize Travis Kelce, please.
I wish that they would do that, because he should be target 1 for the 49ers. Not Jennings, not Pearsall, not Demarcus Robinson, not even Ayuk to me when he comes back. It should be Kittle. He killed it last year, Michelle. He had arguably his best season, in my opinion. He was phenomenal. Brisbee Life on Twitch, shout out to the Twitch fam, says, I would like them to draft Cam Scatteraboo from Arizona State to do this. I have to say, I'm no draft expert, Michelle, but you just fire up Cam Scatteraboo's highlights, and oh my goodness, is that a fun watch. The man has such incredible balance. He's bouncing off people left, right, and center. I wouldn't want him in the first round. I don't know that I would want him in the second round, or maybe if you have to trade back into the back end of the second round, like, Kyle Shanahan is watching him and just dreaming about all the fun ways he could use him.
Yeah, and he's supposed to be a 3rd round pick. And some analysts have him falling to the 4th round. I love watching Cam Scatteraboo. And again, like, I'm not saying that I'm an expert at watching the film and knowing he's going to be good, but this man looks like he's going to be good, right? He looks like he loves football so much, and he was at ASU offense. He was everything. They lean on him to pretty much do everything and anything, and he's a receiver as well. And this is going to be a guy that all 31 fan bases that don't have him on their team absolutely hates. They're going to hate him because he's a jerk. I mean, he comes at you and he's going to say things that you don't like, but when he's on your team, you're going to love him. I want him to be a Steeler so bad. I don't want him to go to the 49ers because Christian McCaffrey is going to take too much work away. But I am excited to see him in the NFL. I just really hope it's not for a team I hate.
Heineman says Scatterboo is Cabo ready. Yeah, they got to replenish the Cabo click a little bit. But like, it would be kind of cool if you draft Scatterboo, let's say in the 3rd round, and you use him in the use check role this season. And then if Christian McCaffrey is gone after the year or hurt or whatever, then he can transition into a more stereotypical running back role for the 49ers. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. Like I said, obviously, I don't want them to do it at 11, just like I don't want them to take Tyler Warren at 11. But if you could somehow find a way to get Scatterboo, I just feel like that is there's 2 really good spots for him. One, I think, is San Francisco, and the other is Miami, of course, with Mike McDaniel, who loves to use the running backs in all sorts of crazy ways too. But I have to say, like, he is a draft crush of mine.
He's also of mine. And it's not like he's not even super athletic. So it's not like he's going to take off and rip 40-yard, 50-yard runs. Like that's not his game. But he is the type of player that can get you those 5 yards, 6 yards consistently. Mm-hmm. And that maybe is just something that they're looking for, to go with the Christian McCaffrey. And then he could take over Christian McCaffrey's role after that. And he's not going to be as dynamic, but he certainly can be a huge part of the offense. So if they want to go with their favorite thing to do in the 3rd round, take a running back, then please let it be Cam Scatterboo.
Trade Brock Purdy for a 2nd-round pick and then use that to draft Scatterboo.
Do not trade Brock Purdy for a 2nd-round pick.
Although I would not be shocked if Brock did get traded, for the record.
It better be for an early 1st round.
No one is giving up an early 1st-round pick for Brock Purdy. That is not going to happen. I mean, I would love it if they did, but yeah, I don't think that is going to happen. Brisbee Life on Twitch says that is literally how they worked Roger Craig into the lineup in the 80s. Not sure we need to repeat the 80s plan, even though I know things were good in the 80s, but I'm just saying you could find a spot for him, right? And certainly Kyle Shanahan would be able to find a spot for him if he wanted to go that way. That, as much as there is on Brock's shoulders this year, Michelle, also kind of Kyle Shanahan. And this is something that I'm a little worried about. I talked about this with Jesse Naylor yesterday. Kyle does not strike me as the motivational type coach. He doesn't really come up with like the mantra for the season, or, like all gas, no brakes, like Robert Saleh. He's not really into the motivation. Kyle's into the X's and the O's. And I think this is a year where you're going to have to kind of rely on a motivation a little bit. You're going to have to kind of, I don't know, not lie to the team, but like, you need to impress upon them that this is a new year, a new era. More importantly, you're not getting back to anything. You are a new team doing something again for the first time. And Kyle, really, that's not really his thing.
No, I do not take him as this great motivational speaker, right? He's very much relies on the analytics, the being a good play caller, just like processes, right? And running everything smoothly, but also having great playmakers that everything can be run smoothly. And now all of a sudden you're going to have to hype these guys up. You're going to have to talk them into believing that they are great, because I mean, the guys that have left were cocky, right? Very, very cocky. They knew they were good and they felt like they can beat anybody. And that's really good when you are really good, but they weren't playing to that level anymore. So then it ended up being bad that they're so cocky. But all of a sudden now he's going to have to get these guys' confidence up, and we don't know if he can do that.
We got a comment on the show I did with Jesse yesterday from Careless Whispers of Kyle's Playbook, which is a fantastic username. But they said Kyle isn't a motivator. That's why they did the boombox entrance. It's to hype them up because Kyle is boring. I hadn't thought about that, but it is kind of interesting. Like, did the 49ers, did the players kind of do that because maybe, they weren't sort of getting that juice from anywhere else in the team? I have no idea. It could have just been those guys. But I do think that Kyle was the beneficiary in this sort of era of having a bunch of guys on the team collectively at the same time that were kind of just those crazy self-motivated, like, let's go out and just like a bunch of crazed dogs and have some fun, to quote Lawrence Taylor. You had Debo and Dre and Trent, and you had Richard Sherman back in the day was one of those guys. You had a core group of those guys that were psychos. And some of those guys are gone, and they're going to have to replace that somehow. Maybe they do it through the draft. I don't know. But I think that if you don't have that from the players and you don't get it from Kyle, that's going to be a hole.
Yeah, and the issue is, right, their best player on defense, Nick Bosa, is on the quieter side. He's not really like a strong leader. And that can't be a reason you don't pay a really talented guy, but that does hurt. It's much easier to pay someone the amount of money that he's making if they're also such a good locker room presence. And I don't really know if Nick Bosa gives you that. And then when you're paying Brock Purdy, I do like Brock Purdy's leadership, and I think he's strong, but he's not like that rah-rah guy, right? He's not going to just like get you so pumped up to play for him. At least that's not the vibes I get from him, but maybe everyone else is different. It's really just George Kittle left at this point.
Definitely Kittle for sure. Even Christian McCaffrey, like he's not a rah-rah.
No,
Juwan Jennings, I think, kind of is.
Okay, but he can't be the rah-rah guy. I mean, that one game is making everyone really overrate Juwan Jennings a little bit.
You'd like it to be your best players.
Yeah.
Right. Like just like they say, when your best players are your hardest workers, your culture is great. Oscar Alfaro, YouTube channel member, says the team captains will make a difference and have a serious impact. His prediction is Purdy, Kittle, Warner, Diamador Lenore, Dominic Pooney. Trent Williams will be a captain again this year. I'm trying to think who else. Like, was there anybody like in waiting? Demo is the one guy that I think is going to sort of take a step up this year. I don't know if Pooney will be a captain. I think it'll be Trent. I don't think they'll have two captains on the offensive line. But the fact that Kyle chose Brock Purdy and Diamador Lenore to speak to the team last year when they were trying to keep things from going off the rails shows you that he thinks of them as the leaders.
And I think that's fair. I will say Diamador Lenore, he does need to step up big time. This is his time to shine, right? Because he came in and he was definitely the low end guy. There was a lot of big names, a lot of big stars on that defense, and he's now worked his way up. He's now a deep veteran at this point. He's been in the league for a while. He's proved his worth. Do you know in the last 3 seasons, he's allowed 2 touchdowns in coverage? Just 2.
He's awesome. I did not know that.
The fewest among all corners with 1,000 coverage snaps, which is a lot of corners. 2.
Damn.
Yeah. Sauce Gardner is second with 3. So that's how good Diamador Lenore has been the last 3 seasons. So I think he's proved it now with his play. And once you prove it with your play, you can start talking. You can start hyping these guys up because they're like, you know what? This dude is the dog and he's great. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to trust what he has to say. That's why it's hard for a guy like Juwan Jennings to be the leader, right? Because it's like, all right, yeah, you're good, but like, I don't know. Why are we following you, right? You're not a star in this league. But Diamador Lenore, at this point, his play has spoken for itself that now he can be the strong leader on defense. But we need these guys to pick it up. And maybe you ask Nick Bosa, you know, maybe Robert Saleh needs to go to Nick Bosa and say, we need more from you this year as a leader. Like, I think that's fair to ask from a guy who's making $34 million a year.
And the other thing, too, about Lenore is he's gotten paid. He's gotten a second contract from the team. That gives him credibility in the locker room, too. Like, the team has said, we believe in you. We think you're one of those guys. And the fact that they signed him to that extension is so damn good. That's like an example of the 49ers being proactive, getting a contract done, signing him to a phenomenal deal. Like, that's how we want them to be with all their guys. Doesn't seem like they are with all the guys, unfortunately, but that one was a good one. And I think we're going to be, you know, all the talk about, well, the 49ers don't want to pay guys for what they've done in the past. They want to pay them for what they're going to do. Well, the contract they signed Lenore to is a phenomenal example of that. That contract is going to look better and better and better as the years go by.
And it's almost like that should have taught them the lesson of doing these things quickly instead of dragging them on, because that one works so well, but instead they're just being incredibly stubborn. I would love to be in the offices just one day, just a fly on the wall in the offices, just to see the mood of Kyle Shanahan and just to see how he's, I don't know, like working right now, right? Like, is he in his own head? Is he struggling? Is he upset? Is he like frustrated with how they're working, or is he on with their plan, like okay with what their plan that they have? I would love to know if they're actually working together or working against each other.
Yeah, I can't imagine he was in love with a lot of like just a mass exodus of moves, or at least the not signing other people in free agency. But who knows? Maybe he is. I think we'll find out the first time he speaks publicly, because he's not one that's going to, you know, just BS people. So I think we'll find out relatively soon. But the Niners are probably going to be in a lot more close games next year, Michelle. And that is a little scary because Kyle is not the best at close games. He's not the best at game management. He's not the best at making the decisions that make it easier for his team to win on the margins, right? He doesn't care about special teams. He doesn't go for it on fourth down. If that is the case, that's going to throw into sharp relief his deficiencies in that part of his game.
And also, not even that, because everything you just said is true, but also with them going into the season where it looks like with Jake Moody. So you're going to be in close games with a kicker who we cannot trust. And like you said, Kyle Shanahan does not go for it on fourth down. So he's not going to put the ball in the hands of Brock Purdy and his offense to stay on the field and win the game. He's going to put the ball for Jake Moody's foot. And are we going to trust that in any given week with the game tied with 10 seconds to go and he needs to make a 47-yard field goal? How good do you feel about that?
Terrible. I feel terrible about that. It's amazing to me that, and I tweeted this out earlier, it all goes back to that game against Tampa Bay, right? Where Jake Moody struggles. He's terrible. He misses not one, not two, but 3 kicks. And then Debo gets in the fight with Tabor Pepper. And the 3 guys in this picture, Michelle, if you're watching on the stream, Debo, Tabor, and Moody, the guy that's still on the 49ers is Jake Moody. Somehow they cut Tabor Pepper yesterday. Debo's been traded. Jake Moody has outlasted everybody. And I love, by the way, the photographer in the background of this picture, her face. He is looking at this scrum of the 49ers fighting one another. And she's disgusted. She just has this look on her face like, what are these idiots doing?
She kind of looks like she loves it, though. That's exactly what I was looking at. And I totally made my screen bigger to try to see her face better because her face is fantastic. It's just the perfect face to sum up whatever's happening. She's like, you guys are idiots.
I feel like that's how she's looking at the 49ers offseason right now. Just like, she got like the head kind of tilted. Like, what are we doing? So it's just funny. But yeah, Jake Moody, and maybe look, he's going to do the whole kicking competition thing. But as we've talked about, he doesn't miss the kicks in practice. He looks awesome in practice. He just doesn't make them during the game. I know that, some people were trying to blame Mitch Wishnowsky being out, his holder being out, and David Lombardi was trying to blame Tabor Pepper for the snaps and that being part of the reason Jake Moody missed the kicks. I think Jake Moody missed the kicks because he's just not that good. Like, I think the simplest explanation is he's not that good. And they may go into the season with him, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on the 49ers red zone offense. They need to score touchdowns because if they don't, it's going to be Jake Moody.
And the thing is, any kicker, if you made it in the NFL, like you're relatively good, right? That's not what we're saying. And you can go on a hot streak. Like he can start next year, be good, but you never know when that hot streak's going to end and when he's going to get back to missing and getting in his head. And he's clearly the type of guy that once he misses 1 or 2, it gets in his head and he has the yips. And that's just not something that you want to have to count on.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. And look, maybe Robert Saleh can talk some sense to him. Be like, dude, don't worry about going for it on fourth down and not getting it. My defense will help bail you out of it. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to be hopeful here, Michelle. I'm trying to put a positive spin on it. Somebody yesterday tweeted out the video of the pick at the stick. Navarro Bowman against the Falcons late in the year. Atlanta's driving in the red zone. They're about to score a touchdown to take the lead, and Bowman gets a tipped interception and returns it 7 miles for a touchdown. The Niners won. It was the last game at Candlestick Park. It clinched them going to the playoffs. And I was just thinking, like, damn, we went from Willis and Bowman to Fred and Dre Greenlaw. And, we got to see who the next tandem is going to be, right? We went from Frank Gore and Vernon Davis to Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. And we got to see who the next group is going to be. We went from Joe Staley to Trent Williams. Now we got to find out who's next. That's what the 49ers are drafting, essentially. It's like, if we're going to have this sort of next era, that's what this draft could be.
You have to hit on them, and we have to trust them to hit correctly, which they have not been doing so far or lately. Besides last draft, where it looks like they might have found a couple good pieces, they need to have another really, really good draft. And if they can do that, like there is going into the season, we really have no idea what to expect, right? If they go 6-11 again, I don't think any of us are going to be shocked. If they go 10-6, I don't think any of us are going to be shocked. Now, if they were to like go 15-2, I would be shocked. But like it really could go any way of the spectrum, where they could be one of the worst teams in the league or one of the best. And we don't know what that is. I do know, though, if they don't sign Brock Purdy and they drag this out and they go in with Mac Jones as their quarterback, then it's going to be towards the end of the spectrum.
Eric Dowling says signing Mac Jones is disrespectful to Brock Purdy. I'm sure he didn't love it. I'll say that, because let's say Brock holds out, Michelle, and then you've got Mac Jones taking all the snaps in like the training camp and the preseason program, and Mac is zipping the ball around and looking good, and Kyle Shanahan's sitting there thinking, this is the guy I wanted in 2021. See, I was right. And then all of a sudden he doesn't really care if Brock Purdy is sitting. I think Brock is very aware of, like, I'm a 7th round pick. I got my shot due to fluke, basically, because 2 guys in front of me got hurt. And that could be easily taken away from me. Like, I think he knows 7th round quarterbacks generally don't have a lot of stability when it comes to starting quarterback jobs. So I wouldn't be shocked maybe if at some point Brock just tells his agent, look, just stop trying to get, an extra $5 million out of him or whatever. I need to get this done because I need to get back.
If he could get a $50 million a year deal, he should just take it. And I know that's easier said than done, because you don't want to feel disrespected when the Jordan Loves and the Tuas and the Trevor Lawrences, who have not done as much as you have, are making $55 million. And you do deserve to make that. But at the same time, if they're going to play hardball, maybe you just take a shorter year deal. Say, yeah, give me a 2 or 3 year deal. I'll prove myself. Give me the $50 million a year. And then you can pay me a buttload of money once I prove myself.
I'm less concerned with the average per year now and more concerned with the guaranteed money. You can fiddle around with void years and stuff to bump the average up to make it look different. The guaranteed money is more what's important to me, because that'll really tell you, like, for instance, like, let's just say they gave him a 5-year deal, fully guaranteed, right? You'd be like, holy crap, they really believe in him. Like, they really think that this is something. But if it's a 5-year deal, but only 3 of them are really guaranteed, then you're like, what do they really, do they really believe in this guy? I don't know. The guaranteed money, I think, is going to tell us a lot more. And we'll wait and see. They only signed Debo to that 3-year deal because they flat out told him, we don't think you're going to age well. Like, they told him that in the negotiations. Like, the Niners are not afraid to just lay it all out there. So the actual contract will tell us how much they really believe in him. If it's got a lot of outs and trap doors and things like that, we'll know.
And if they don't have a good record next year and they pay Brock, a lot of people are going to be putting pressure on Brock and saying he shouldn't have got the contract. And it could be that he's performing just fine, but the defense is so bad and, putting pressure on him too. So I don't know how they go into this year with enough depth to make a long run. They kind of remind me of, like, this is going to be bad, like the Seahawks have been the last couple of years, where it's like, yeah, they could be a playoff team, but you don't really envision them being able to make a Super Bowl run. That's kind of how I view them going into this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to set our expectations at, if the Niners could make the playoffs, that would be fantastic. If they could somehow manage to just get in, even if it was as, the last wild card team. They play a schedule that a lot of people think is going to be easy. I don't know if it's going to be as easy as people think, but a lot of people look at it and say it's trash and that should put them in the playoffs. Maybe they can. And we've seen, look at the Commanders this year, right? You get into the playoffs, anything is possible, particularly with Kyle Shanahan, who, as much as people want to rag on him, has a fantastic playoff record. So maybe that's their goal. Just find a way to get in, and who knows?
And who knows? Maybe they hit on draft picks this year. Like, maybe they find a couple of good defensive pieces. I mean, that's what the Eagles had to do this last offseason, right? To get back to the Super Bowl. Last year, in 2023, they had one of the worst defenses in the league. Their passing defense was 31st or 32nd in the league. And then all of a sudden, they hit on a couple corners in the draft, and Mitchell, and then also in Cooper DeJean. Completely changes their defense, right?
And Vic Fangio.
Yeah, and adding Vic Fangio. So they can do it. And going through the draft and hitting on that is obviously way better than overpaying in free agency. So I get why they want to stay away from the big guys in free agency and focus on the draft. But at the same time, they need to add some viable role players, even, because they don't even have that besides DeMarcus Robinson. Add some viable role players and maybe a couple starters in there that are on the cheaper end, in free agency, and it just doesn't seem like they're willing to even spend a dime. And that makes me worried. Are we sure that Jed York has the money? Did he lose money? Like, what is happening?
Oh, no, he has the money. He absolutely
How do we know? Maybe he got himself into some trouble and he just doesn't have the money.
Some gambling debts. I don't know. No, I mean, Tim Kawakami was putting on Twitter, like literally, he makes $140 million in profit every year because of their stadium deal and how advantageous that is. He's got the money. He just don't want to spend it. Spy versus Spy says stuff will either get done or it won't. Stop worrying about stuff we have no control over. I mean, dude, do you know what we do here? Like, what am I supposed to do a show and say, well, it'll either get done or it won't? That's the show. Like, that, we kind of have to talk about this stuff. I'm not saying, just saying. By the way, speaking of talking about stuff, Michelle, I don't know if you heard this. Sam Darnold had his introductory press conference for the Seahawks yesterday. And they were like, hey, Sam, like, how did you flip the switch and play so well last year? Listen to this answer from Sam Darnold. I was like stunned.
I really, thank Brock a ton, Brock Purdy, for, just his style of play and how he kind of described his style. Was like, we got a ton of great playmakers on offense. Like, my job is just to play point guard and get the ball in their hands and let them go do great things with the rock. And when I started to change my thought process as a quarterback to kind of just getting the ball in my guys' hands, then that's kind of where it unlocked for me a little bit.
Michelle, Sam Darnold has been in the league since 2018, but it took playing with Brock Purdy in year 6 for him to realize I should just get the ball to my playmakers. Like, really?
That's actually huge to hear. Like, to say, for him to admit that too. Sam Darnold does seem to be we hate on Sam Darnold. He does seem to be a really nice, likable guy. Yes. We hate his play. He seems to be a great guy. And that's probably why a lot of, his coaches love him, his teammates love him, and why he keeps getting opportunities. Mm-hmm. But for him to say that about Brock, that's huge. I mean, Brock Purdy is still so young in this league, and he was playing with him in 2023. So his first real season in the league. So that is huge. And I think that's even bigger telling that they need to just sign Brock. Brock has the right mentals. And that's a huge part of this too. When you're paying someone, they need to have the right brain, the right mentals, and the right motivation. I think Brock really is the full package. He's missing maybe that top tier skill set, but with everything else he offers, he's worth it. And Sam Darnold coming out to say that actually makes me like Darnold a little bit more, that he's willing to admit that. And then that's huge for Brock Purdy to get kind of that recognition to say that he was able to help a veteran get better.
I hate on Sam Darnold as much as anybody, but like you said, it is not on him as a person. He seems completely likable, certainly nice. As a guy, he seems fantastic. It's just his play that I don't like. In terms of Brock, I don't worry about Brock from the neck up at all. And that includes like off the field stuff, whether he's putting in the time and the effort. I don't worry about his toughness. I think Brock is a very tough player. The only stuff I worry about from Brock Purdy is the neck down, is the physical limitations that he has and whether or not that will hold the team back. And all of that stuff, when you're evaluating a quarterback, it's all of it, right? There's so many boxes that you have to check. Is he a good leader? Does he put the time in off the field? Does he process things well, right? Can he handle the playbook? All of that stuff. And Brock checks so many of those boxes. I just worry about, some of the physical stuff, the injury history scares me. There's a lot of stuff swirling among 49ers content creators about Brock's health last season. Obviously, we know how the year ended with the injury, but even before the injury, Michelle, it looked like to me he was laboring when he was throwing some of those passes. Some of the passes to Pearsall later in the year, he's like putting like everything he has behind the throw, and he's underthrowing him. The injury history scares me. It's all the physical stuff with Brock. It's none of the mental stuff.
It is all physical. And the biggest thing that you like that we have to worry about is the arm. That's it. Because I'm really not worried about the skill set all too much, about his limitations, about not having the biggest arm in the world. Because also he's all of a sudden showing his scrambling ability. So you love to see that. It's really just, can the elbow hold up? Can the arm hold up in general? The throwing arm. And, if the 49ers were to come out and say, this is why we don't feel comfortable paying him, I would actually understand that, right? Like, we're just too worried about the arm holding strong, and maybe that's why they want to give him a 2 or 3 year deal instead of going long. That's the only thought process I can go with them wanting to move on from Brock. And if that's the case, then obviously they don't actually want to say that out loud to their fan base, because you want to be able to trade him and you don't want to say you're worried about the arm. But that's like the only reasoning I can come up with why they wouldn't just give him $55 million a year and move on and have a great offseason with him.
It's frustrating because the injury to Brock, like if Brock was coming off a torn ACL, you would be like, whatever, he'll be fine. Like, but it's an injury to his moneymaker, essentially, right? The arm, the thing that he needs to rely on the most. And it was the weakest physical part of his game before the injury. That's the scary thing. It's the same reason why the Ayuk injury is so scary, right? Ayuk made his money by getting open quickly with precise route running, sharp cuts, right? Well, now he's got to come back on a knee that's completely destroyed, and he's got to, get back to that level and put a lot of strain and stress on that knee. And it's like, man, 2 significant injuries to the 49ers, specifically to the parts of those players that they need to rely on the most.
I know. Did it really have to be the throwing arm?
Right,
Really? Twice.
2 times Brock Purdy has injured his throwing arm and said my arm felt like it's on fire. That is not what you want to hear when you're in contract negotiations with someone.
And that's probably why he will not play without getting a contract, right? And he shouldn't.
Yeah, right.
Because if that happens again, if his elbow gets hurt again, his shoulder gets hurt again, his throwing arm, wherever gets hurt again, he's not going to get the contract.
You wouldn't think. So we sit and we wait. Again, for what it's worth, Tim Kawakami has consistently said he's heard that contract talks are not contentious or any of that, but they don't usually get, I shouldn't say that, but it's March 14th. They'll tend to get a lot more contentious, a lot more quickly as the calendar continues to advance. We got the draft coming up at the end of April, especially if they don't have a deal done before the draft, Michelle. Then it'll get real contentious real quick.
And I don't think they're going to have one done. I think they're going to drag this out all summer long.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were Brock Purdy trade negotiations during the draft.
Send him to the Steelers, please.
Oh,
I'll just have to color his jersey on my wall.
Speaking of that,
sticker.
Wedge Antilles asked, Michelle, are you ready for Rodgers in the black and gold?
Nope. If that happens, I will be only a 49ers fan.
Your fandom, your Steelers fandom is on the line.
Yeah, I will not root for the Steelers if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback.
Wow. Okay. That is crazy to me.
So I need the 49ers not to suck next year, right? Because they're going to be my full-blown team. Can they just not? This can't be the year that they just completely go under and suck.
All right. Before we go, let's read a couple more reviews, a couple more here, as we always do the roast and toast on Fridays. You leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Pods. Michelle will toast you, and she will roast me. This one comes from Joga5, who says, keeps me coming back, 5 stars. I started listening to Stats and Crew in 2022. Like many people, I get hooked on a podcast, but inevitably move on after a year. Not here. 3 years and counting. Every weekday is a new episode with different members and different perspectives. Not everyone's on the same page, so it keeps it real when trying to figure out what exactly is going wrong with the 49ers.
Stats, you're so bad at fantasy football that you refuse to enforce rules for your league mates to set their lineups because you know it's the only way you have a chance to win. You're a terrible commissioner.
I mean, I am bad at fantasy football. Like, that's just true. I'm a terrible fan.
Can you admit, though, that's the only reason you don't care if people set their lineups? Because you want people not to set them so you can win?
No, I don't admit that at all.
You should.
I'm in a league with grown men. They should be able to set their own damn lineup.
You're a commissioner. You have to make sure people set their lineups. It's why I left the league.
I am a commissioner, Michelle, okay? I get paid to commission. I don't get paid to babysit. I am not a babysitter. I am a commissioner. If you can't set your lineup, that's your own damn fault.
Okay.
And last one, this one comes from Macaroni. 5 stars, perfect ingredients. All the hosts are incredible on the Gold Standard Network. My favorite duo is Rob and Michelle. They go together like mimosas and brown sugar oatmeal shaken espresso.
Nice. Stats, you're so lame that your idea of a wild Friday night is weeping on the couch while rewatching the 49ers lose Super Bowl 59 for the 100th time, or 58 for the 100th time.
And Super Bowl 54. Just make sure you get that right. And the Super Bowl in 2012.
Yeah, that's your crazy wild Friday nights.
Michelle's just spitting facts. And she's like, all these are like, Michelle knows me on a personal level too. So she knows exactly how to slip the knife in between the ribs and twist and make these extra painful. So thank you, Michelle, for that. Thank you, everybody, for your reviews. Please keep them coming. It helps push us up the charts. So when people search for 49ers podcasts, we pop up. And that's how new people discover us. It's really hard to do for a podcast. So please keep those coming. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Michelle, what do you got cooking for your Friday night?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, maybe you should rewatch some of the 49ers old Super Bowls.
I'm gonna go do something. I just don't know yet. I just don't know what yet.
Enjoy the rest of your Friday, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye, y'all.